Which deceased person, if brought back to life, would be the most surprised to learn they became famous posthumously? Niels Henrik Abel, mathematician completely unknown in his lifetime, died at age 26 of tuberculosis. Then his mathematical work was discovered, which put him near the top rank of mathematicians ever. When Norway raised a statue of him, they put it on a tall column because nobody knows what he looked like. Similarly, Évariste Galois died at age 21. Nah, Galois knew his work was gonna revolutionize mathematics. He also knew that he had terrible eyesight and was a poor shot, so dedicated the last night of his life before the duel summarizing the proofs and ideas in his head. Truly an unfathomable sacrifice. 99% of people would probably spend their last hours with their loved ones. The poet John Keats, who died at 25, convinced he'd been robbed of a chance to make a significant contribution to English literature. His gravestone literally reads, "Here lies one whose name was written in water." Most of what I know of Keats comes from the Hyperion Cantos book series, but it sounds like Keats got dealt a pretty messy hand in life. Alfred Wegener, who invented tectonic plate theory. No one believed him until long after he was dead. There were so many elementary school students that recognized how NW Africa would fit nicely between N and S America. Ignaz Semmelweis faced ruin because of his insistence on aseptic technique, hand washing. He would probably wake up and have a heart attack if he found out how important his methods are today. Elizabeth Short, posthumously known as the Black Dahlia. Even people who do not know much about true crime always still seem to know her name. This question got me thinking about all the people that would be surprised at how much notoriety they got from disappearing or being murdered. Vincent Van Gogh. Definitely. He just wanted to sell and make his art his whole life. He died without having that. I'm pretty sure he died dirt poor. His grandson made him famous. It was his dream to be famous for his art, and he'll never know because he died before it happened. It was his brother's wife and son who made him famous, actually. But yeah, it's incredibly tragic that so many artists who are practically worshipped now died without knowing people appreciated their work. Herman Melville, author of Moby Dick, was considered an unsuccessful writer while he was alive. He only managed to sell about 3,000 copies of Moby Dick in his time. Now it's one of the most well-known classics. Emily Dickinson, Edgar Allan Poe, Sylvia Plath, Franz Kafka. There'd be a lot of shock writers on this list. I mean, you take any composer, writer, or painter from centuries ago and they will be surprised. During their life, they could have been next to royalty, but to imagine that you are celebrated even after hundreds of years, it's not something easy to wrap your head around, I imagine. So it would be cool to say anyone very respected, like Beethoven, Cervantes, or Goya. To know that everyone considers you the best of the best, even after the rotting time, might blow your mind. I feel like of all people, Beethoven would be the least surprised. However, anyone before him would be severely surprised because it was a tradition to lose all fame once you died since nobody would play your music. Beethoven's death started the movement of people playing and conducting dead people's music, and he was worshipped like the next Jesus sometimes. That Roman in Pompeii who died while masturbating. That's the way I want to go out. Alan Turing. This is a great answer. His achievements were supposed to be top secret. Otzi the Iceman. It's the earliest surviving naturally mummified human remains, at about 5,000 years old. It would take a while to explain the concept of fame to him first. I remember reading about this in a standardized reading test in 4th grade. It was so interesting that I read it a bunch of times and almost ran out of time to finish the section Lamau. Joseph Merrick, otherwise known as the Elephant Man. I think he would be surprised about how many plays, books, and even had a movie made about him. Edit. Wow. Thank you guys for silver, and yes, I know that Joseph Merrick was famous in time, but I think that he'd be surprised that he's even more famous, but also that today's time he would be more accepted. I think people of this generation would be more supportive of him in general. Poor guy was treated harshly throughout his lifetime. I think Shakespeare would be floored if he knew his works were still being taught and read. Seriously? You guys read my plays that are meant to be watched? What, you egg? Rasputin would be proud and confused, especially if he heard the song and fanfictions written about him. Fanfictions? You know what? I won't even ask. Anne Frank. They published my diary? And it's been read by millions of people? So Anne actually was in the process during her arrest of preparing her diary for publication, as they heard in a broadcast some diaries might be published after the war. I know someone who read the true original for research, and apparently it's much longer and filled with more mundane stuff most people wouldn't be interested in reading. Henrietta Lacks. Edward Teach, also known as Blackbeard. Dude was a pirate for a few years. He had some reputation, but he wasn't exactly out there for decades doing pirate stuff, and well, he was just another outlaw. Don't think he'd see pirates being romanticized like this coming, or him being the face of old-timey pirates in general. Blackbeards are here! Hey, he'd be surprised by his long-lasting legacy. But dude, he was infamous in his time. A General History of the Pirates, written just after his death, was a bestseller. Besides, you don't get called El Gran Diablo by the Spanish authorities and blockade Charleston Harbor for 6 days and somehow not end up famous. Franz Kafka. He had no faith in his work, and his will stated the executor of it to destroy them all. Another guy went against these wishes and published. Wow. You really earned that username. That was so hard. I was going to say something until I saw it. Got me. He was likely just some middle-rank accountant or something like that, and now his name is remembered when those of kings and priests and warlords and whatnot from his time are all forgotten. Just like Erastus, the director of public works from Romans 16:23, he was mentioned in a list of people sending their greetings, but became famous when someone found his name carved in a public work. To go the opposite way, I've always thought the ancient Roman emperors like Julius Caesar would be embarrassed at how small their once great empire now is. At its height under Trajan's rule, the empire spanned a greater distance than the modern United States, and now the empire is completely dissolved and their descendants are relegated back to the peninsula. If I were a Roman emperor, I would be proud to know that the Roman state, monarchy, republic, empire, Byzantium lasted for more than 2000 years. I would be fine with Italy just being a regular nation, knowing that Latin languages are spoken everywhere and that Roman culture is dominant over the entire Western Hemisphere. Vincent Van Gogh. The dude was severely depressed his whole life and only sold one painting while alive. He eventually killed himself only for his art to be worth millions now. I lived in Amsterdam for a few years and always wondered what Van Gogh would make of the mobs of tourists at the museum dedicated solely to his work, especially because more visit that museum than the Rijksmuseum next door with countless Rembrandts and Vermeers and other Dutch master works. Nostradamus. He wouldn't have seen it coming, that's for sure. He'd probably be happy that his scam worked. Emmett Till. He's not famous enough for the price he paid, sadly. This should be higher on the list though. The way he was treated as a human is what made him well known. Emmett Till probably just wanted to live an undiscriminated, fulfilling life like most people I know, no matter what color they are. Unfortunately, it was the way he died that made him famous, so he probably wouldn't have any guess fame was coming as it was happening. I think some of these people may have been able to guess they'd be famous after the art they created and left behind. Most of the people listed here got some chance at life and creating something. Most of them probably wanted some level of fame. Emmett Till became the face of a movement against lynching and racism because how he died. We must not forget. May he rest in power. Jon Snow. No, Dr. Jon Snow. Look it up. He was the chief pioneer of the germ theory of medicine and considered the founder of epidemiology, as well as the person who proved that cholera spreads through water, particularly because of the Broad Street Pump incident. His findings and reports were heavily scrutinized all his life, and he was dismissed as a nut and conspiracy theorist. Insert "you know nothing, Jon Snow" joke here. But those very same reports and investigations are the main reason modern cities have sewers under them. See also Ignaz Semmelweis, proponent of the "doctors wash your damn hands and mothers won't die in childbirth" theory. He was so shunned that he ended up in a mental hospital and died after being beaten by orderlies. Rosalind Franklin. Not even Watson and Crick truly recognized the importance of her work in her lifetime. Now the first thing you're taught in genetics class is that it was her picture that helped them figure it out. I think she'd be surprised to learn she's famous now, because she was completely overshadowed and unrecognized in her life, not because I believe she didn't know what she was doing was important. She has a very interesting story. It's believed that they actually took or saw her image, known as Photo 51, without her knowledge. Had it not been for that specific image, there's a good chance that double helix structure wouldn't have been discovered as early as it was. Here's the real kicker about her though. Watson and Crick received Nobel Peace Prizes as a result of their discovery, but she wasn't awarded one, seeing as she died a few years prior.